Let's talk about a form of torture so powerful, so complete, that it doesn't need any physical violence at all to absolutely shatter a person's mind.
Yeah, you heard that right. Forget what you've seen in movies. There are no scars, no bruises, no broken bones here.
The weapon is something incredibly simple, almost mundane, and that's what makes it so terrifying. It's the total, relentless absence of everything, delivered through a single maddening color.
Okay, so let's put a name to this. It's formally known as white torture, and honestly, it's a masterclass in how to weaponize sensory deprivation.
The International Journal of Psychiatric Nursing lays it out pretty clearly. And the key here is totality. I mean, think about it. It's not just a white room. It's an entire world of white. You're dressed in white, you're fed white food, like plain rice on a white plate. The room is completely soundproof. There is literally nothing for your senses to grab onto. No color, no sound, no texture, just nothing.
So, why is all this nothingness so incredibly destructive? Well, it all comes down to how our brains are wired. See, when you starve the brain of input, it doesn't just shut down, it starts to turn on itself.
Without any real stimuli coming in, your mind desperately tries to create its own. Victims start hallucinating, seeing things, hearing things that just aren't there. Their sense of balance completely goes haywire. Trying to think logically? Forget it. A crushing sense of hopelessness takes over, and then the very core of who you are, your identity, it just starts to dissolve. This quote from psychiatrist Dr. Craig Haney, wow, it really gets to the horrifying heart of it all. In these kinds of isolated environments, people can become so numb, so disconnected from reality, that hurting themselves becomes the only way to feel something, anything. It's a way to prove you still exist when your entire world is telling you that you don't. And the results are just devastating. In California's isolation units, which are built on these same principles of sensory deprivation, the suicide rates are up to 10 times higher than in the rest of the prison population. That number isn't an accident. It's a direct consequence of an environment engineered to break the human spirit. But here's the thing you have to understand. The ultimate goal isn't just to cause pain. It's much more calculated. It's about achieving a very specific psychological state called learned helplessness. The idea is to make a person feel so completely powerless that they just give up, extinguishing their will to resist and making them totally compliant.
Now, techniques this effective don't just appear out of thin air. They're actually the product of decades of secret, government-funded research into the mechanics of the human mind and how to take it apart.
You can literally draw a straight line from the Cold War right up to the War on Terror. It all starts back in 1951 with these CIA-funded experiments. What they learned was then written down, formalized into secret interrogation manuals like Kubark. Then, in the 80s, those same methods were used to train allies, and sure enough, after 9/11, they were dusted off and rebranded as enhanced interrogation techniques.
Listen to these words from the researcher who kicked it all off, Dr. Donald Hebb. He himself was shocked by his own findings. He realized you didn't need complicated drugs or hypnosis to crack someone's mind. All you had to do was take away their senses. You could make a perfectly healthy person question their own sanity just by putting them in a quiet, empty room.
So, historian Alfred W. McCoy studied this whole 50-year history and boiled it all down to a disturbingly simple two-part formula. First, sensory disorientation. Use things like hoods, isolation, or, white rooms. Second, self-inflicted pain. Force the person into stress positions, making them stand for hours or hold their arms out. That combination is designed to create a feeling of total powerlessness.
Okay, so that's the theory, the formula from the lab. But what does it actually look like when it's put into practice in the real world? Well, let's connect the dots from the research to the images that ended up shocking the entire world. Remember that infamous photo from Abu Ghraib? The man on the box with a hood over his head. According to McCoy, that wasn't random cruelty from a few rogue soldiers. No, it was a textbook application of the CIA's doctrine. The hood, that's your sensory disorientation. The outstretched arms, that's the self-inflicted pain. Once you know the formula, you see it plain as day.
And at places like Guantanamo, this formula was refined even further into a kind of three-phase attack. Phase 1 was universal, attacking the senses with light, sound, touch. Phase 2 got cultural, using triggers like dogs or sexual humiliation that they knew would be particularly potent against detainees from Arab cultures. And finally, Phase 3 got personal, exploiting an individual's specific, documented phobias against them.
So if you put these methods side by side, you see they're really two sides of the same coin. White torture goes for total sensory annihilation to make a personality just fall apart. Enhanced interrogation, on the other hand, uses calculated sensory manipulation, stress, noise, no sleep to create that learned helplessness. The tools are a bit different, but the core philosophy is exactly the same. Weaponize a person's own senses to break their mind.
Which brings us to the final and maybe most disturbing question of all. If these methods are so clearly designed to torture someone, how on earth can they be considered legal? The answer, it turns out, is hidden in some very, very careful wording.
I mean, on paper, the international standard is crystal clear. The UN Convention Against Torture, which the US ratified, explicitly bans severe physical and psychological pain. It says there are no exceptions, none. It's supposed to be an absolute ban.
But here's the legal maneuver. When the U.S. ratified the treaty, it attached some specific notes, these reservations, that created a loophole. They came up with their own, very narrow definition of mental torture. And guess what it was specifically written to exclude? You got it, sensory deprivation and self-inflicted pain, the two pillars of the CIA's methods. This custom definition was then written right into U.S. federal law.
And this wasn't just some forgotten footnote in an old treaty. That exact same loophole, that same definition, was copied word for word into major laws like the Military Commissions Act of 2006. This effectively shielded the entire psychological torture program from legal challenges by wrapping it in the protection of U.S. law.
So this entire system really hinges on a definition of harm that says if you can't see the bruise, it doesn't count. It's a system designed to dismantle a human being from the inside out without leaving a single physical trace. And that leaves us with one last haunting question to wrestle with. If the wounds are invisible, does that make the weapon any less real?